Welcome to American Medieval, a podcast about the fact that if the United States has never been truly modern, it's probably because we've always been a little bit medieval. I'm your host, Professor Matthew Gabriel, and I've been researching, teaching, and talking about the Middle Ages, well, to anyone who will listen at least, for more than 3 decades. Each week on the show, we'll be joined by an expert scholar who'll share their fascination with, and sometimes their revulsion by, both the medieval world itself as well as the ways the historical period has been remembered and used right here in the USA. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of American Medieval. I am your host, Professor Matthew Gabriel, and I am delighted to be joined by Michael Livingston. Michael is an award-winning historian and author who frequently lectures on military history and hosts documentaries. Former Secretary General for the United States Commission on Military History, he serves as the Citadel Distinguished Professor at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. And his latest book, which I'm excited to talk about today, was published just last year, Bloody Crowns, A New History of the 100 Years' War in the U.S., and a different title in the U.K., The 200 Years' War, The Bloody Crowns of England and France, 1292 to 1492. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. But before we get to talk about your book, longtime listeners of the show will know that we like to start off with kind of a silly question. So, because it involves time machines. So I hope you'll indulge me about time machines. All right. So let's imagine for the moment we have a time machine. It has been presented to you, and that it's there and back, I should say, so you don't have to stay anywhere. But it's single use. The caveat is you have to go back and tell a younger version of yourself, a younger version of Mike Livingston, that they will someday grow up to be a medieval historian. How do they react to that news?
I think younger me would be thrilled, honestly.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a history teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once I got over the I want to be a fireman, or whatever,
I wanted to be a dinosaur for a little while, so yeah.
I mean, you still can, brother. You still can.
Dream big.
Make it real, man.
Yeah. Fake
it till you make it. No, I think I'd have been really chuffed, honestly, because my surprise would be that I'd kind of made it that far, just because the idea of being a professor was kind of foreign to me, foreign to my family, kind of sort of where we'd grown up or whatever. So that would have been kind of surprising, but also it'd be oh, hell yeah, man. That's awesome. Good. Am I otherwise happy, or is everything else okay? What happened to your hair? What happened to the hair? What happened there? I think I'd have a lot of other questions about that's not good. What's with that limp? But yeah, I think I'd be pretty pleased about that. Yeah, man.
Okay. I mean, you're the first person to actually put this in perspective. As younger you would have lots of other questions other than the, what are you doing for a job? So, which I think is entirely fair.
Yeah, I think just younger me, I'd be dude, where's the hair? What's happened to your jump shot? That's not good anymore. I think I would have had those kind of questions more than okay, yeah, whatever. That's what you do for your job. But how's everything else going? And I'm thankful I'd be able to say life's good, man. Life's good. It turned out okay.
That's great. That's fantastic. So, but you mentioned too, wanting to be like a history teacher specifically, which is obviously, part of your position and my position as well, teaching at a university. So did you have kind of a specific teacher that you kind of thought of? And I asked that because, when I've asked this question of other people, oftentimes people can point to one person. Yeah, it was Professor this guy in this course I took, or Mrs. whoever in high school that really kind of changed the way that I thought about school kind of generally, but just also put the idea that oh yeah, no, I might want to do this at some point.
It's a great question. When I got to college, I had professors that really kind of pushed me to think I could do this, as opposed to teaching high school or something
sure.
that. No, you got the chops to go to the next level. That was something that I was really pushed to, and I had some wonderful professors who helped me get there. I think, as we hopefully all do. But early on, kind of wanting to teach. When I was a kid, I wanted to read books. I loved reading. And it was no, you gotta go to bed. Stop reading. Go to sleep. And in our house, my parents, and I don't know when the hell they got these things. They had a set of World Book encyclopedias, and they stored them in my room because we didn't have anywhere else for them. They just stored them in my room. So I learned very, very young. It's one of my earliest memories that they wouldn't know if I read the encyclopedia. So I just sat down and I'm that's a big series. I'll start with this first one. And I read the encyclopedias as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I knew things, right? Because what kind of idiot reads the encyclopedia? And I really liked the history bits. I really liked those bits.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, teaching history would be kind of cool. And then I had this dream that I could be a writer. I thought, that'd be neat. I could be a writer. I could write fiction and stuff like that. And my parents said, that's cute, but like, you need a real job.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I mean, if I taught history, I'd have the summers off and then I could write novels and like winter, chicken dinner. Like, this is just perfect.
Yeah.
So that was my scheme. I was like, I got this thing settled. And then my only problem really was, because I kind of had this thought from pretty young, was at every stage, I remember kind of like looking around and thinking, yeah, I want to teach, but not this crowd. I don't think I could teach. Like in middle school, I was like, not us.
Yeah.
I would know. This would not be good. And then, so yeah, when I got to college and had professors who were like, you could actually do this. If I could just, plod my way through this, I could figure it out. So
yeah. The encyclopedia thing, like, and I don't want to get too personal, but like, do you think your parents kind of knew what they were doing there? Because it reminds me of like there's a meme online, or I saw some post on like, old Twitter or on Blue Sky or something like that. This woman was saying like, my kid thinks they're getting away with something by reading with a flashlight in their bed, but they've never once asked why their batteries haven't run out in like 3 years.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. At least my parents claim they actually didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't know. And it was only much later where I think it might have been in high school. And so like something came up on like, we were playing Trivial Pursuit or something. Oh. And they're like, how do you know that or whatever? And I'm like,
yeah.
Well, like that was in the encyclopedia, like Lake Baikal, like that was in the encyclopedia. Like I read that article. Like, you did what now?
Yeah.
That was when I think it kind of came out. So if it was a scam, they're playing the long game.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And like, kudos to them,
Yeah. They're sitting there at home, rubbing their hands, just,
Look, like he still doesn't know. He still doesn't know. And like, what else have they cooked up? I don't know.
I love to your mention of your kind of scheme, right? Is that you were going to be a teacher, have your summers off, just be a writer, practice your jump shot, as you mentioned, which, maybe that fell by the wayside.
It did, yeah.
But I haven't seen you play ball, so I don't know. But anyway.
It's not good.
But that kind of paired thing, that's really interesting too, because I think that's, at least in my experience, and I think for others that I've talked to as well, people who kind of go into being teachers or even professors, is that they kind of know that there's some writing involved, but it's like an either or thing sometimes. It's like there's an intent to focus on, I'm just going to do the kind of the research and, produce my articles, and then the teaching thing will be kind of a side thing. Or they'll be like, look, I really want to be a teacher and I'll do that kind of research. Very quickly, you become disabused of that, learning how both are really important kind of once you get in that role. But it seems like you seem to have a sense of how they were at least kind of functionally connected, not from the get-go, but pretty early on.
Yeah. I mean, originally I was thinking, right, I'm just going to be teaching and then the writing is something else and is a different world.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as I got sort of exposed to kind of the professionalism of college, and I had these professors who were like, oh, you could do this, and this is what it looks like. I sort of had that instilled in me at that point. This is the reality. I didn't have to sort of unlearn a phantasm or anything. It was just, no, you got to publish or perish, and you better be a good teacher, right? Like, and that's how this works. I mean, theoretically, you have to be a good teacher, but we probably both know lots of bad teachers who've kind of made it through.
Yeah, we'll save that for the end of the episode to name names. But
yeah. I got a list. The truth of it is, I think I don't want to disappoint people. And so like, they never teach us how to teach.
Yeah.
So it was just like, well, how do I want to I don't want to disappoint my students. Like, that person sucked. I don't want to be like them.
Yeah.
That person's awesome. I want to be like them. Well, how did they do it? And so I was just kind of building it organically as I was moving along with, again, I was really fortunate. I had some great exemplars, just some great human beings who were guiding me into what this should look like and trusting me from the get-go. I mean, I had an amazing religion professor, incredibly important, Mike Parsons at Baylor University, because I went to Baylor for my undergraduate. And I was in his New Testament survey class as my first semester, which was hugely challenging for me. Kind of give him my background, and then his trust in me. And, he was like, all right, well, you should take my class next semester. And I looked at the roll and I'm like, you don't teach a freshman class next semester. He's like, no, it's my graduate class. Take my graduate class. And I'm like, oh, a graduate seminar on the book of Acts is what you want me to do? Yeah. Like, I'm a freshman. You do know that. Yeah. You'll be fine. That sort of trust that a professor can have in a student was just really life-changing for me. I was very lucky.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And I think that too, like, in ways that oftentimes people don't realize. They're shaped by those types of experience, by having good kind of models, like not just for, those of us who kind of are, for lack of a better term, kind of practitioners, like people out there, kind of professional medievalists or professional historians or scholars or whatever, but taking students seriously. And I say that as a way of like, that's one of the ways that I've really been fortunate to kind of learn to how teaching and research really intersect, is not just kind of doing one thing in a classroom and then doing another thing in the research, but bringing the research into the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Undergraduates, our students as real interlocutors, as real conversation partners, and saying like, hey, I've been thinking about this, what do you guys think about this? And then watching them tear apart my argument, over the course of like 2 class sessions is incredibly humbling and, really exciting oftentimes, right? So it can just be so much fun to kind of do that and to be able to have those kind of really in-depth conversations, not just in a graduate seminar, but like in a lecture hall. Like if people try it, it can happen that way.
Oh, yeah. I've repeatedly all right, students, I sometimes won't tell them. I'll just be like, here's this idea. Let's take it apart. Like, let's rip it to shreds. And sometimes I will be like, here's what I'm working on. I don't know. Let's see if this works.
Yeah.
Encouraging students to take us on, I think, is a wonderful thing. I love it when a student, will come and say, I've decided what I want to do my research paper on. Yeah. What do you want to do it on? I read this article of yours and I want to say that it's wrong.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
All right. Well, it's kind of like every once in a while we get asked, in doing a peer review, for an article or something, or even a book proposal, if you're sort of a target of that, you shouldn't be the reviewer. But it's happened to me a couple of times now where it's like, I'm the only person who can really review this. But I mentioned it. And so I, tell the editor, look, you should have somebody else do the review. Oh, there's nobody else, and blah, blah. Okay, fine. And then it's like, all right, well, this person's taking me on, but you could take me on better than this. Here, use these knives. Like, these are the knives to stab me with. If you're going to go for it,
That's
man.
right, yeah.
Use these, man. These ones are better. You're not holding it right. Hold the knife like this when you come at me.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not interested in being right. I'm interested in getting it right. If that means I'm wrong, okay, cool. I'm wrong. Like, that's fine because I need us to get things right. And students do respond to that. And they really do respond to being included in that process and recognized as, even if this is an elective for them or whatever, that they can still play a role.
Yeah.
And a vital one and a very necessary one, I think, for those of us who are kind of like doing it right.
That's such a great distinction, is not being concerned about being right, but getting it right.
Yeah.
Because it really emphasizes that doing the humanities generally, history, literature and stuff like that, it's a collaborative process. Like, I mean, we have this kind of stereotype of us sitting in, cold, musty places, by dim light, creating knowledge or something like that. But it's really, it's all the conversations that we have with colleagues and peers and engaging with other scholarship that has been produced before us. And like, it's really much more engaging and engaged than people oftentimes kind of give credit for. And allowing students to be a part of that, I think, is absolutely critical. So.
No, I love it. My students sometimes will ask me like, can you see yourself not teaching? Right. And I was like, no, I don't know that I can. I don't know that I could do this without teaching. Could I see myself like being fabulously wealthy and paying somebody to do all my grading? That's possible. I could see that. That is something I could see. But the class time experience is too vital. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much fun to be in a classroom. I'm on, as we're recording this, I'm actually on leave. And one of the things I am looking forward to most is returning to the classroom and being in front of students. So I'm not disparaging my time on leave. It is a nice time away from the classroom. But at the same time, like, it will be good to be back. So
I know exactly what you mean. Whenever I've gone on sabbatical or whatever, I'm like, yay. Oh, yeah. Like, what am I going to do? I hope they still love me when I come back. Don't forget me.
Exactly. So one of the things that scholars often do this is what's called a segue in the podcast world, right, is write books. And you have a new book just out last year, as you mentioned. So first of all, so in the US, different title, 100 Years War. In the UK, 200 Years War. But I want to back up really quickly because, I think most listeners to our podcast, they have kind of a passing understanding of the Middle Ages. But could you just give us like the quick and dirty, what is the 100 Years War, first of all?
So the 100 Years War is a period of conflict between England and France that happens in the sort of 14th, 15th centuries. It's 116 years by the traditional definition, but that doesn't roll off the tongue. So 100 Years War. And it's really a period where a lot of cool stuff happens. This is like Henry V. This is Joan of Arc. This is the Battle of Crécy, Agincourt, like lots of really exciting stuff. And I think that's the general impression that people have, right? Is what they got from Shakespeare,
Sure.
What they got from some movies, maybe. In some ways, it's really classic medieval, right? And this is where you got people in the kind of armor that people think of when they think of knights and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's a period of really, kind of cool images and cool people and really cool events, but also a very, I think, poorly misunderstood thing. It's one of these things that everybody thinks they know it, and really kind of nobody does, which is why I ended up writing the book. Yeah, as you said, Bloody Crowns in the U.S. and then 200 Years War in the U.K., which is its own weird story how that ended up happening. But yeah, I got asked to do this single volume, a history of it, which is insane, profoundly dumb thing to try to do. And then I made it bigger. And so, yeah, I made it even worse for myself.
Yeah. But one of the things that you argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, right, is that it is kind of a mistake to see it constrained just to those 100 years, that it is part of a much longer conflict between the monarchies of England and France. And so could you kind of walk me through, why did you come to that conclusion? Kind of what were you thinking as you were trying to kind of reframe this within kind of a larger political and, military and cultural conflict?
When I'm approaching a project like this, I'm thinking in terms of story.
Okay.
The narrative. What am I arguing to whom, right? What do they already know? And so there's a lot of kind of like big picture thinking before I get into the weeds of who fought in this battle or whatever.
Yeah.
Sort of like, what is that battle? Just sort of like in a big picture sense. I'm putting lots of stuff into my mind. And among those big kind of narrative questions is, okay, yeah, what is the 100 years? I'm going to do a history of the 100 years. Okay, what is that? I know the dates. What is it, right? And asking questions at that level quickly made the whole thing fall apart. Made everything I just said about what it is fall apart. It was like, okay, well, this is a fight between England and France. And well, no, actually, it is and isn't, right? Because it's also a fight that's the Low Countries and Italy and Spain. Oh my God, it's everybody. Oh, it has this starting date. Okay, why does it have that starting date? All right, it has that starting date because of this event. Okay. What's the ending date? Oh, it's this. Why is that the ending date? Well, that doesn't match the start, right? If the start is about X, the end should be about X. No, it's about something else. Well, what the hell? So which one of these is right? Right. And if the one is wrong, well, why is the other? And then you started looking at, well, why do we even call it the 100 Years' War? Oh, well, this is something that happened in the 19th century. Somebody came up with this title. Nobody fighting in this conflict called it this. Nobody started it. Nobody ended it. It's just this thing. And that people have used that. It was a chapter heading for a French textbook that this guy was just like, I need a heading for this chapter. 100 Years War. And now we've all run with it. Like it's an entity, like it is a codified piece of history that you use to understand things, right? And to put things in boxes.
Can I just pause you for 1 second? So it really began as the chapter title in a textbook, in a French textbook in the 19th century?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. That's the first instance of its being used.
That's the first instance.
That's amazing.
The Guerre de Cent Ans. Yeah. That's it. That's the earliest point. It doesn't go before then. I mean, this is a complete creation. Yeah. And then now everybody runs with it, right? And now, and of course, then people will say how dare you change the 100 Years' War? And you're like, what are we talking about at this point, right? It's like the people that get mad at me for moving a battle and how dare you move the battle? It's like, but we don't know where the battle is. Yeah. You're getting mad about a theory, right? There's no evidence of where the battle is. Why is this changing anything? Just, so yeah, as soon as I started thinking about story, the whole thing kind of it was like trying to pick up water. It just fell right out of your hands. And so it was like, well, but I've signed a contract to write a book. So
the book has to be produced. Yeah.
Book must be produced. I must have something to build this. And when I sort of took off the board, in a sense, everything I'd been taught, right? Everything I thought I knew. And just say, okay, what's really holding this together, if anything? I ended up kind of decentering everything from what matters to England, which is how we've generally taught and approached the period, is just what is England up to? And instead, all right, what's going on geopolitically? They're not the only player. And really came to see this as a French-driven conflict. And it's about France defining itself. And England is one of the forces. Burgundy's another. The Low Countries, there's lots of other forces that are standing in the way of that. That story begins in 1292 and ends in 1492. And I didn't intend for that to be a perfect 200 years. It was just those were the years. And then I was like, 200 Years' War, that's kind of cool. Yeah. That's where the title for the UK book then came from. So it's just really to me, this is how I kind of just approach anything is, it's not that I don't care about what everybody else has said, but like,
Sure.
I need to understand things at a very core level. And if that means, things that I thought were true might not be true, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case with this book.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, 19th century, worst century. That is a core belief core tenet of mine. Like they messed up so many things. But related to that, like it's really interesting that you're saying like how historiography just kind of compounds at times. And then you can chase something back and then it just becomes air.
Yeah.
Like at the end of it, like it just kind of disappears into the ether. It's a textbook title, right? A textbook chapter title. That's crazy. Or, I mean, I think many scholars have the same experience. Like you're chasing a footnote of a footnote of a footnote all the way back somewhere. And it's just like, some guy in the 18th century said like, yeah, this is what I think is kind of going on. And then
right.
It just gets cited until forever. So
yeah. And that people like hold on so desperately.
They do.
To these things. I mean, as I'm sure I've had death threats for some of this stuff. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
That you're this, like, I think this person needs to die because they're changing something that happened 1,000 years ago. Like, what is happening right now? Like, neither of us has a dog in this fight, dude. Like, everybody's dead. What is happening? But like, and on the other hand, I'm kind of like, I mean, that's kind of cool that you care about history that much. Like, that's cool. I'm sorry that you felt the need to burn my book, but I'm glad you bought it first. And so there's that good stuff. But it's strange how written in stone these things become. They're just not true.
Yeah.
Or at least if they're true, they come with lots of caveats. As I say in the book, my new definition here, I'm very upfront. The whole first chapter is basically me exploding the one thing and then saying, and here's my thing to replace it. But like nobody declared a 200 years war begun or ended either, right? I'm just trying to make a better division of history, but it's also false in the sense that it's not a thing.
Yeah. Two thoughts here immediately is that one, absolutely like how invested people are in history because it becomes kind of part of their identity, right? Is that it matters to me that this happened because I can trace some nebulous connection back to something that happened 1,000 years ago to me here sitting here in 2026. When you're dealing with something like the 100 or 200 years war, right? That can be wrapped up in national identity, especially in France and especially in the UK and England as well, right? Is that because in the British system, like you got Shakespeare and like you were saying, right? Like all this good stuff and Henry V and all these guys, like this matters, Crécy and Agincourt and stuff like that. So like people can take that very seriously, even though like materially you showing definitively that this happened rather than that, like it doesn't impact anybody's life. Nobody's life changes in any fundamental way. But second thing, and we can come back to that if you want, but is that you've mentioned kind of something a couple of times is about story. Mm-hmm. It's about narrative and kind of like thinking of the way that we tell history as a story, which is, kind of been with the profession of history since kind of the beginning, but has somewhat fallen out of fashion, right? And I think is kind of coming back. I was talking with a friend, an Americanist, Megan Kate Nelson, who's, Pulitzer Prize finalist, American historian, has a great new book out and stuff like that. And she's a very big proponent of specifically narrative history in which you have a very clear beginning and ending. Like you were saying, and the beginning needs to match the end. It can't just be kind of loosely connected analyses along the way because that works in a certain mode, but it really doesn't in other modes, especially if you're trying to communicate with people. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to remind you about a brand new podcast joining us on Multitude, Dreaming Against the Machine. As American Medieval is about the past, Dreaming Against the Machine is about envisioning a realistic and hopeful future. Each week, journalist and astrophysicist Dr. Adam Becker will have an earnest and entertaining conversation with a guest about possible futures, seen through the lens of history, science, and culture. In a world where tech oligarchs and their power fantasies seem everywhere, Dreaming Against the Machine takes back the public conversation about what our world can and should be. New episodes every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Whenever I'm approaching a project, who is this for? Mm-hmm. And that is going to drive countless decisions. The Bloody Crowns 200 Years War, whatever you want to call it, which side of the pond you're on, and I don't care. I want to communicate this with people, and it's written for the widest audience possible. Now, it's got its endnotes and all that jazz, and hopefully scholars can read it and be like, yep, he checked the boxes, he did all that kind of stuff. But look, I'm not writing for my immediate cadre of colleagues. I'm writing for the biggest audience possible.
Yeah.
And I think that difference is probably kind of more important than ever now. We need to be talking to each other, obviously, as medievalists or historians, whatever. But it's more important than ever, I think, to be like shouting out the window too, at the passersby, like, this is how this works. And we can't do that with internal lingo and internal, like, this is how we know how things work. No, open it up. And narrative is how people from time immemorial have conveyed communication. We've communicated through story. It's about the only universal that we have is we tell each other stories. And so the more that I can approach the work through story and through kind of that sort of, beginning, middle, end, has a pace, has a climax, has an arc. Like I'm thinking these things that people think about as novels or something. I mean, I do them when I write novels, but I'm also having those same thoughts when I'm doing a history book. It's just that one can be fact checked and the other one can't because it's out of my own mind, right? But I'm doing the same thing. I don't think of the writing process any differently because in both cases, I must communicate to the most people and be understood.
Yeah.
And that is driving everything. So I 100% agree. And I think it's really essential.
Yeah. And I don't mean, and I hope it's not coming across, either to you or to the listeners that I'm saying that there isn't a place for kind of deep analysis. Like that type of scholarship is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly important. You and I both do that, right? In academic articles and in other kind of differently facing books. But I think that too is that the thing that I keep kind of bringing back is like when you said, you looked back at kind of how do we define the 100 Years' War? And this is the agreed starting point and this is the agreed ending point. And like the starting point was about one thing and the ending point was about a different thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to tell a story, and if we understand history as, at least in part, right, like it has an artificial beginning and an artificial end, like there needs to be some sort of at least coherence to the argument that you're trying to make across that time.
And of course, history itself, is an argument, right? It is a story.
Yes.
History is that sort of web that we're creating to make the facts all line up. That's why, again, to go back, when I'm first approaching something like this project, that's why I'm doing that big picture stuff.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have that straight, how on earth am I going to tell people about this war if I don't know what it's about and why it is? In this case, having that fall apart from the get-go was kind of a bummer, but also meant, okay, now I have more work to do because I have to figure out something to replace it, but it now means an opportunity to sort of reconfigure and recontextualize, what we think we know. Not that it's bad to believe the other thing. It's not like a moral judgment or something, but like, okay, that didn't make sense. Here's why. This hopefully makes sense. Here's why.
Yeah.
And also, hey, if you want to have a different perspective, like, here's the model. Here's how you do that. Because again, I can't point to anybody declaring the 200 Years' War begun or ended.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. We're creating a false container for history. And that sort of sucks. But also, one has to do that because one can't write a book of all human history and have it be in any way like sensible with any detail.
So if I could, I want to make a point and then I want maybe you to challenge it or, you can say that I'm brilliant and this is the best podcast you've ever listened to. And
It's brilliant.
Such a delight to be on. Either one would be totally fine. But is that the other thing too is like you said, like you can't say you don't have a source that says like, okay, the 200 or 100 years war has just begun because humans are very bad at understanding kind of the context in which they oftentimes live, right? Is that they get swept up in events that can explode, or sometimes they think something is going to be huge and it really becomes kind of nothing and it becomes kind of a very kind of minor thing as well. So I guess my question would be like for the subjects, like even for your book, like you still deal with all kind of the greatest hits, if you will, of the period, right? Like all the battles and all the figures and stuff like that normally we associate with this period. Like, was there a sense that they were part of something larger though? Or were they, from your reading of kind of the sources, were they still much more involved or concerned about kind of the mundane experiences or the more localized parameters of the conflict as they were seeing it.
Well, we inevitably look through, our own kind of personal localized eyes.
Of course.
And at the same time, these people, especially in the later stages, they have this sense of history.
Yeah.
Right. Why are we fighting? Oh, because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But they also are fighting, kind of habitually.
Okay.
And so it's both connected to a bigger thing, but is also at this point metastasized, right? When the fight starts in 1292, what ends it is the same thing. So I did manage to get that, but it's like, oh, this should be kind of one and done. Nobody was thinking we got 2 centuries of this ahead of us. And over that 2 centuries, because it's a generational conflict, right? Nobody who's there at the start is there at the end.
Yeah.
Nobody. It is also a metastasizing conflict, right? Just as we see in major generational wars that are still ongoing today. Yeah, they're about the same thing, but it's metastasized.
Yeah.
So, right, in the case of the 200 Years' War, in the middle of this thing, we get like the papal schism. And this is now all of a sudden like, well, that's a whole different thing. It's related, though. It's related to this conflict, and the two feed off of each other, but it's also another thing, right? And the class and social differentiation that happens because of the Black Death, when that hits, well, that changes some things, and that makes some things about different stuff. But again, they're all related within this kind of container of what's going on.
Sure. Okay.
So it's a sort of fight that, while it has a continuity, it is metastasizing. And again, those beginning and end points. Right. 1292, there's a reason I sort of choose that date and not another. But like in some respects, my introduction, I go all the way back to Clovis. And then I'm like, but really things get hot and heavy in 1066.
Yep.
Well, and then they get really hot and heavy again, with Eleanor of Aquitaine. So we got that to go on. Like, you're in the end sort of drawing lines across the timeline that are inevitably like shaky, right? They're inevitably gray. We just don't always think about that. I use the example to my students. Tell me when World War II ended. Tell me, students, when did it end? And they'll, okay, well, Google says this. Okay, cool. Why? Why is that the end? Like, why is that the end date?
Yeah.
Why is the Korean War not part of it? Right? Like, let's look at what's going on in the Korean War. Why is that not part of it? Why do we draw a line between these things? Why is the Korean War separated from the Vietnam War? Why? And there's no easy answers to these questions, right? When does the Napoleonic Wars end? Do they end with the death of Napoleon? Like, I don't know. Like, so, in the end, all you can really do is create a coherent narrative, a coherent story. But I think it's essential, and I try very hard to do this in my books, to be transparent about what you are actually doing. That this is not, I'm replacing, that set of commandments with this one. I'm very interested instead in showing as big an audience as I can, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. So this is why my story is what it is. But it's just a story. There might be other ways of putting this together. We need to be transparent about what we do. And I think the more we actually trust our audiences to be a part of that process, the more connection we have with them, but also the better off they are at being able to fend off alternative views of history that don't check out, right? That don't really work.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, these are the tools that you use. Like, this is how you put it together. Does that pass the smell test? It does not. So don't use that one.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking, one of the reasons I was asking too, because I was thinking about some of my own work, my recent book with David Perry, Oathbreakers, which is about a civil war in the 9th century.
Good book.
Thank you very much. Is that there are moments at which it seems very clear that as things start to break down kind of the late 820s and then they continue through the 840s, like you have the same guys who are involved. So it seems very clear to them, they understand this as one thing.
Yeah.
But there is at that same time kind of a generational turnover. And so there are new people who kind of come in, and I'm wondering, and then, even beyond that, like, although because we had to stop the book at some point, like we ended at a certain point, like there is Carolingian drama between familial members or increasingly distant, like all the way through until the early 10th century, right? So like we have another, kind of extended. And so I always wonder, like, do those guys, like we see it as part of the same struggle, but like, did they really see it as part of the same thing? And so, because the sources are not, sometimes they're kind of clear and sometimes they're not. So, but like you, I think one of the ways that you get around that when you're trying to tell a story is, again, is just to be transparent. Is like, this is why we're making the choices that we're making. This is what the sources are saying.
Yeah.
Here's what the sources are. If you can come up with another kind of understanding, then that's kind of great. But it's a conversation. And I think that's, what I like to think of it as just humility before the sources is understanding that conclusions are provisional. That doesn't mean that they're guesses by any chance, but this is the best way that we can understand it. But somebody might be able to read this a little bit better. There might be another source that might be out there that sheds a different type of light on things. And we always have to be okay with that, I think, when we're dealing with the past.
I want it. I want it so bad.
Yeah.
I'm, come on, man. Somebody find me a chronicle that blows up every theory I've got. Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Sometimes I remember when I was working on the Battle of Brunanburh, one of these accusations, of like, oh, well, you bloody Yank, and you refuse to see my pet little conspiracy theory because you don't want to be wrong. And I was like, are you kidding? If I was proven wrong, guess who gets to write another book about it? Me.
That's right.
And that would be good for me.
Yeah.
If I'm right, well, the end. That's the end of that. And I don't like that. I want what comes next. I think there's a kind of really basic misunderstanding that people have about how historians work. And yeah, I think it's good to burst that bubble, as it were.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that makes me think about this is that the way of telling stories, or the way that we kind of seem to approach the past, this is probably influenced by fiction, or, kind of structures of storytelling that maybe not everybody, but many people kind of associate more with kind of novels or with other, modes of kind of literary production. And you are a many times published novelist as well. And so, do you see those two as kind of connected? Do you have kind of the same process, or does one seem to inform the other more than, or do they seem kind of equally interpenetrative?
Yeah, I see them as the same thing.
Okay.
Again, if I'm writing a novel, it sort of depends on which novel. The Shards series of novels was historical based, right? So I had to get the history right. When I was doing archaeological research, if I'm depicting, Augustus Caesar saying something in a certain room, does that room exist? How big is that room? I've got that data.
Yeah.
Even if I don't have what he's saying, right? I'm on my own there. But then other novels I've written are complete fiction. Nothing in that exists outside of my head.
Yeah.
But in all those cases, I'm still dealing with the same sort of structural questions of, how am I going to communicate?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to hook my reader? How am I going to continue their fascination with this? How am I going to sort of level them up through this, teach them what they need to learn, right? If I'm doing my book on Agincourt, I could just start on the day of Agincourt and go, but I don't think you would know what was going on. I got to get some of this backstory. So which backstory? How am I going to deliver that? In the same way as a fiction novel, I could start the action here because it's really hot and heavy action, but you won't know what's going on. So I need to get backstory. Well, how am I going to give you that backstory? How much, how little, when, where, how? These questions are just simple narrative storytelling questions. And I think we have done kind of a self-inflicted wound over the years by kind of dividing up by departments these things. That one thing, that's an English thing. This other thing, that's a history thing, right? And these things are different things, and God forbid they should ever mix. I'm like, no, man, I got a foot in both these camps.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing because they do inform each other. I actually write multiple books at a time. And part of what's happening there is that I'm allowing both to sort of play off of each other, right? So, last year I had, I think, 3 books come out. 2 were fiction. One was, I think I was right. Or maybe it was 2. I can't remember, whatever. But because they were, right, I don't have a downtime is part of what's happening, right? If I get stuck on one, all right, I'll just go to the other one, right?
Yeah.
And I'll work on that one while in the background, the mind is figuring out how to unstick the other. All right, now I'll go back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But also that sort of interplay, I think, helps me from getting kind of locked in to a sort of single tone or whatever that I think would be detrimental to making a good, interesting story.
Yeah.
Again, whether it's complete make-believe or whether it is historical. In either case, I've got to hook the reader and I got to keep them entertained if I want them to learn anything. It's just, it's just like our students, right? I come into the classroom, I'm not a monotone guy. I'm running around the room and yelling and screaming and climbing on desks and waving weapons. I'm part of that's because I'm weird, right? And I got issues. But the other is, look, you can't sleep. in my classroom. And so therefore you're awake and therefore you're learning.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get you to do. So if I gotta I tell my students, look, please don't make me set myself on fire. If I've got to, okay, but please don't.
Yes, I'd rather not. Thank you.
I'd really rather not, right? But I need you awake. I need you focused. I need you engaged. And believe me, you'll like it better, right? The medicine's going to go down a lot better if we're all having a good time.
Yeah.
And I think that's true in the classroom as it is in a book. Let's make this exciting, because it is exciting, right? And when we kind of get together at a conference, we can geek out about the excitement of, some mark of paleography or something like that. Ooh, look at this ligature.
Yeah.
And that's sort of fun for us as geeks, but the bigger pictures are fun too. And so, I think sharing that as transparent and as openly as possible is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that we do the things that we do. And, one of them is for many of us is because it's a job and it pays us money and it allows us to, live and stuff like that.
You get paid?
But there's another reason that we...
What?
What? Not for this podcast. But I mean, we decided to take this thing, do this thing rather than another thing in the same way that, and I always think about this too, is that, for many of the courses that I teach, for example, at it's a large public university, more, engineering kind of STEM-y focused. And so many of the students that I have, it's probably the only course that they take. Some of them take it because it's a gen ed requirement or something like that. But there's lots of other gen ed courses they could take. They take, that course because they're kind of interested in the subject. And if I can convey some of the excitement about it to them that I feel, then, I mean, that's a win. And we're all just going to have a much better time in the classroom. And that's another way that kind of research and teaching can kind of interconnect is I want people to read the things that I write. I hope that they do, and I hope they find them interesting. And if you want to disagree with me, great. I haven't gotten a death threat. I got certainly lots of angry emails about Bright Ages, especially. David and I joke, Dave, I don't joke, but David jokes that he loves that I'm the first author because I get all the emails.
Nice.
Rather than him, yeah.
Nice.
But anyway, the other thing, so going back to your response too about kind of, fiction and kind of storytelling is that, I'm interested too because you have such kind of wide-ranging interests generally. Mm-hmm. And, you served as I mentioned, in the little bio, on the Presidential Commission on Military History. And so it seems like in some ways, although you're a medievalist and you're definitely a medievalist, your interests aren't constrained by periods. Is that kind of fair?
Oh, that's very fair.
Okay.
And I actually remember my agents were talking about this and that it's sort of harder to platform when you have lots of hats. And I was like, yeah,
sure.
But I like the hats. So I'm incredibly fortunate to teach at an institution that is fine with all of it. And I know that that's a bit of a privilege. I mean, when I was going onto the market back in the day, I'd published an award-winning short story and I was doing a lot of editing of Middle English texts. I had a couple publications there. And my PhD is actually in English because that's where paleography and editing exists in this country. And I remember, I won't say who, but I remember having an interview at a big school and they were like, we'd really like to have you. And I said, yeah, well, I have this other stuff that I do. And they said, well, no, you don't. No.
Oh.
You don't have you can do whatever you want in your spare time, I suppose. But, if you publish fiction, that has no place here. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go. I mean, I got an offer from one of those places and I was like, no, I do not want to teach there. I don't want to teach where people are closed off like that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very fortunate where I am. There are places in the academy that are well, certain kinds of things can be taught and others can't, right? Is J.R.R. Tolkien, is that actual literature or not? And of course, I'm like, it is. And if you want to throw it out, you got to throw out Homer and you got to throw out all these other things. Please don't throw those out.
Yeah.
So, from an early point, I was, right, I have publications on J.R.R. Tolkien. I have publications on a lot of fantasy stuff because I love it. I love talking about it and thinking about it. And again, I'm very fortunate. I'm teaching somewhere where, Mike, you want to do a book on Tolkien? Go for it. You want to do a book on Chaucer? Go for it. You want to do a book on World War II? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would do all those things. I'm just saying that sort of thing is very liberating. You have to be careful when you wear that many hats. I mean, I just did,
of course,
a couple of weeks ago, I was in Normandy for a week shooting a documentary actually on D-Day. And it's well, okay, I mostly do medieval stuff, but you want me to host a show on, I need to do a lot of work before I get into this to be hopefully not screwing anything up. Because again, I don't want to be right. I want to get it right. And, if I'm going to be in a documentary, what's the script? What are we doing? So I don't feel any constraint other than I don't want to mislead somebody, right? If I'm not going to do something just to do it, because if I do and screw it up, well, I might have caused damage, and that's not good. So yeah, I am very lucky though. Whether I'm a medievalist or a military historian this morning I taught science fiction. It was a great class. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Taught one of Ted Chiang's stories, and it was awesome.
Oh man.
Just great. I know not everybody has that flexibility, and I feel very fortunate to have it.
Yeah. One of the points that David and I make in The Bright Ages, and we've written elsewhere, is like, it seems like if people tell you something is simple and it's easy, then they're selling something.
Yeah.
And if they tell you it's the historians or the scholars' job really to tell you, like, no, it's complicated. You can understand it, but it's going to be messy, and it's going to be provisional, and you can be transparent, as we've talked about several times here, transparent about, this is how I came to the conclusions, so that, if you want to try to figure out another way to understand this, like, do it, but be rigorous about it and be, transparent as well. And I think that's kind of the best that we can hope. And, that's the value of the stuff that we do, I think, right?
It is.
I shouldn't say that provisionally. Like, I need to assert that because I actually do believe it with my whole chest. There is a value to what we do.
Yes. In some degrees, it sort of sucks, right? Because it's not math.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't be like, ta-da, there it is, and it always works. At least in a Euclidean universe, a non-Euclidean universe, everything gets crazy. But in a Euclidean universe, everything works out great. It sort of sucks in that regard, but also it is what we love. And I think it is how the world works. Viewing things in black and white is very comforting and is very swell, I suppose. I don't really know because I don't have the pleasure of doing that anymore. If ignorance is bliss, I don't get to have it. And so I'm trying to take down as many people as I can with me to understand the utter complexity of everything, and this is part of the reason I've really kind of shied away from, social media stuff is just because, look, nobody deals in nuance. It's all this sort of like, black and white thinking and accusation. And that just gets messy and tiring. And I have to deal with that enough in my classes, when they come in and say, oh, I saw this on X or whatever the hell it is now on the Muscovite site. And I'm like, all right, tell me what you saw. And like, let's deal with it. Okay, let's deal with it. We need to be more kind of aware of how things really do work. And the fact that in many cases, that is a losing proposition. I won't ever know what happened at Agincourt. The men that were there did not actually know what happened at Agincourt. They knew what they saw and how they were prepared to understand it, but they don't actually know. Nobody can know that. We are in the position of getting rid of the stuff that isn't right to get closer to what's probably right. I bring pictures of Michelangelo's half-finished statues and how you see him sort of melting things out of the stone, and talk about how when he was asked by a fellow sculptor, how do you do what you do? And Michelangelo looked at him strangely, as only a genius would, and said, oh, it's easy. You just take away what doesn't need to be there. He thought, well, you jerk. But also, that is all it is,
correct.
right? And that's basically what we do as historians and even as scholars generally is, well, what doesn't work? Yeah. All right, we'll get that out. So here's what I think works. If it doesn't work, tell me. Yep. So we got to come up with something else that'll work.
That's right.
To hopefully get closer.
Yeah. Iterative, right? Yeah. It's the process of historical, it's all another reason why calling history revisionist is very frustrating. Like, all history is revisionist. It is, yes. Yeah,
that's so tiring. You feel like, oh, you're a revisionist historian. Oh, you mean a historian. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Is that because that's what you just said? Like, yeah. Yeah, it's so exhausting.
Yes, you repeat yourself.
Yeah, what you mean is we're saying something you don't like. That's what you mean when you say revisionist history. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. It doesn't match with your expectations or your politics or something like that. Right. So let's just lay the cards on the table. So, all right. With that, unfortunately, we are kind of running towards the end of time. Michael, this has been really fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
If people do have this thing called the internet and they want to find out more about you or your work, is there a place on the internet they might be able to find you?
MichaelLivingston.com is a perfectly good way to find me.
That is a great way to find you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I am on Blue Sky too.
Okay.
I think so. I think so. He said with utter confidence.
That's right. Yes.
You can find me on Blue Sky at michaellivingston.com. There you go.
Yes. No, fantastic. And just as a reminder that Michael's new book, Bloody Crowns, is out now in the U.S., and so go look for it wherever fine books are sold. Michael, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody for listening to another episode of American Medieval. We'll be back again next week. Until then, be good or don't. It's up to you. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of American Medieval, a proud member of the Multitude Podcast Collective. I'm your host, Professor Matthew Gabriel, and this episode was edited by Julia Schiaffini. The theme song to American Medieval is from the song Sleeping Bags by OTE. If you'd like to support the show, get ad-free episodes, be inscribed into the Book of Life for being a kind and generous soul, and get some other neat bonus stuff, please visit us at patreon.com/American Medieval. Thanks again for listening. See you all soon.